And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're listening to the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Mark Fortier, who is the founder of Fortier Public Relations. He's been 29 years at this, of publicizing hundreds of successful books. It's earned him the 2019 Porchlight Jack Covert Award for contribution to the business book industry. He's the sixth recipient and only publicist following previous winners like Tom Peters and Seth Godin. He's publicized over 100 bestsellers and 17 number one bestsellers. He's worked on books by 33 of the Thinkers 50, including Jim Collins, Clayton Christensen, Ram Shriram, Seth Godin. If we were to only go over the books that Mark has done well and been involved in, we'd be out of time quickly. So I'm going to just instead fast forward and dive right in. Welcome aboard, Mark.
Glad to be here, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's just dive in. I think that what I find interesting about PR and where it fits into thought leadership and where it fits into book launches is I think oftentimes there's a buyer that doesn't really understand what they're buying and what the expectations are and what's realistic and what's not. So is that a fair statement, or how would you think about it?
So for clients, you mean as the buyer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see. So expectation management certainly is a big part of my job, and definitely PR is a unpredictable thing, unlike things like marketing and stuff like that. So you do have to be very closely engaged with your clients. So we have a team of 25 people, and one of the things I always train my people on is make sure your relationship with your client is as tight as can be. We aim to bond with each other so that you know everything about each other's families and their daily lives.
Sure.
And if there's going to be some losses, you're going to cry together, and there's going to be many wins to celebrate together, and to always have that strong partnership. So with us, we always say probably a bad idea to go into a campaign with expectations. Instead, great idea to go in with high goals. Those are two very different things. So if you say, I know I'm going to get the front page of the New York Times and Today Show and this, and anything less I'm going to be sad about, then you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you go into it thinking, gosh, my top goal is I really want the New York Times, I really want CNBC and Marketplace and Fortune, let's come up with our best strategy to get there. Let's collaborate and really work towards it to get together, and then celebrate those as wins. And chances are that's going to be a happy relationship, and our client will be back for more.
I think that's right. So talk for a little bit about how the market has changed. So it used to be, maybe 10 years ago, maybe a bit more, that a lot of PR was a swing for the fence, meaning, we want, the Today Show, oh my, if we got, an author on the Today Show, the world changes. Or if we got him a New York Times business book review, which I don't even remember the last time I'd seen a lot of those for business books, or they're actually in the business section now, or some of these big visibility, big brand things would be game changers. And I think where I've seen it evolve over the last several years is, that's one way to do it, but more likely it's about understanding the niches and building small wins on top of small wins on top of small wins to equal, in your words, or to get to the goal. So how would you think about that?
So it's still a little bit of both. So there definitely are big wins. We call them needle movers in our industry, and those are definitely what we our eyes on. Yes, there's also incremental growth of working towards those goals in small ways. I'd say the media landscape for business books is relatively similar to what it was 15 years ago. So we still go after CNBC and Fox and Wall Street Journal and New York Times, Financial Times, Fortune. But podcast is definitely something like this one that has really risen in influence. So we've made a big investment in that area. We've hired a full-time podcast booker, built our own database from scratch, because at that time there actually was none, believe it or not. We measure the impact and have data on all the podcasts. We have them broken down into 175 different categories, from innovation to leadership to career. So a big part of our campaigns is now podcasts. And we just had a client on Tim Ferriss a few weeks ago, and he just hit the New York
Very
Times
cool.
bestseller list. So there definitely are those podcasts that are huge needle movers. But yeah, traditional media can still also have that same impact. So it's just changed a little bit about where those needle movers are.
Sure.
And we also have a very multi-channel approach to marketing our authors. So
Right.
we're called a PR firm because that's what people understand. But media placement is just one aspect of what we do. We know that for every book, there might be a different thing that's going to sell the book. So we book podcasts. We have a full-time events manager booking talks and virtual events. We help authors leverage their networks through pre-order campaigns, bulk order strategies, influencer campaigns. So that's definitely changed. And I do think there is a lot more emphasis now with the author of how well they leverage their network. That's a really important part of
So let's stop
success.
there for a moment and talk about the author network, because and you've probably seen something similar. Different types of authors come to you with a different network, right? So someone comes to you and, hey, the book's coming out in 6 months and they've got a phenomenal network. That's great. Someone comes to you and they've got a mediocre network. And then, the worst case is they come to you with virtually no network. How critically important is it to have some level of network and sort of nurturing and building that? Not because it's not something you can do 30 days before a book launch, right?
Yeah. First of all, part of the reason we have a multi-channel approach is because every book and author is going to come with different assets, and sometimes which of those channels is going to be the most successful, and sometimes it's a surprise. And some authors, they're huge on the speaking circuit, but the TV people don't want to touch them, and vice versa. So let's see. And how else should I answer that question?
Well, I was looking for maybe a bit of insight on how important is to, or not maybe, to constantly nurture and develop your network followers, your social media presence, that whole piece.
So, one thing I often tell authors is if they have no social media presence and they're hoping to sell their book in a few months, probably a crazy idea to think, okay, I can get my followers up to enough numbers to make it worth it. And so in that case, the influencer marketing becomes all the more important. So if you aren't on social media, but you have 10 friends that are huge on social media, then contact them and give them the assets to sell you and plug you and recommend you. And that's going to have far more impact than you trying to get your own network up to speed. If you can do that, that's great. Social media tends to be more of a long-term strategy where you're building up your network. And absolutely, you see authors who had really no profile, no credentials even. And they just worked at their network over time and have built followings of millions of followers. And then because of that, then the TV shows call because they have the following, and it creates a whole new reality for them. So it's partly a short-term versus long-term question.
Well, and I think authors are really good at helping authors. And what I mean by that is, and it's not a quid pro quo. It's like, hey, I'm a business author. You're a business author. Maybe you're newer to the game, or I have a stronger following than you. But they're really, really good at sharing testimonials, cross promoting, and it's interesting because if I'm a fan of author X and they've got 100,000 followers, and they recommend a new author that I haven't heard of, that means a lot on the other side. So anything that you're helping your clients with to nurture those relationships with other authors?
Yeah, let's see. You're definitely right that there is that network out there, and that's often how people come to us too, because they hear about it from their authors. And you're right that it's a very supportive network. So our process is we work with each author and tell them, okay, let's put your network onto paper. We create Google spreadsheets in different categories for them. So who are their individual influencers that they know, the Adam Grant types? What are organizations that they have relationships, and then who's in their mass network for a pre-order campaign? And then for the influencers in their network, they should think of, well, what's in it for them? So if you're asking them to help you, what can you do back to help
Sure.
them. For a lot of people, they've built up goodwill and they've never asked for a favor before. And this book is the first time that they get to do that, so that they're going to get some great love back. Sometimes we recommend that authors create what we call a marketing team or ambassador program of, if you join my inner circle and you're kind of joining the marketing team, you're going to get this in exchange, and we're all invested in this together. And it feels a little less lonely as well. And then probably you're going to help them out in the same way on their book when that time
Well,
comes.
and I think what's interesting, and I've seen a lot of that, is it's amazing when you ask what you'll get, right? So if you've got, if you've already got fans or followers or whatever, and you say, yeah, I want this special group of 20 to help me launch the book. It's amazing how many people love to do that and support someone whose work they back.
I literally, just before this interview, was doing a call with the CEO, and I was going over the pre-order campaign, and he was feeling very squeamish about it and thinking like, I just can't imagine like asking people for something or selling something. And then when they do it, it's always their favorite day of the campaign, because they get hundreds of emails back of love, and everyone they've ever done a favor for says, how can I help you? What can I do? And it's just a great feeling.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. Yeah, and I think there's a big difference between feeling like you're selling your book and empowering a community to support you as appreciation, acknowledgement, being part of the tribe, whatever the case may be. I want to talk for a moment, because you've got good insight on this, in terms of what is a realistic or unrealistic expectation that an author may have of their publishers. Because I've seen that, if you look at that as a continuum, I've seen, wow, that is not realistic. And that's pretty pragmatic, and you should be able to expect that. And we're talk about that for a little bit, that author-publisher relationship, because that's a weird.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely varies publisher to publisher, but I'd say over the last few decades, it has changed, where it used to be more of a mother-hen relationship, where the author sits there and the publisher promotes the hell out of their book and sends them on a author tour. Now it's much more of a two-way partnership. And you'll feel that at the contract stage with the publisher, where they'll be asking, well, if we're going to sign you, what are you bringing to the table, and who's in your network, and how many followers do you have? So that it's a two-way partnership, and each partner is contributing to the success of the book, and the publisher.
I want to just push on that. So one of the things I think that happens more and more today than ever is when they're evaluating a publisher to take on an author, not just the advance, but holistically looking at it. It's not just obviously table stakes, great content, great book, you know how to write, like table stakes, even though that is not easy. But they are now more than ever judging on, two authors all being equal. One's got, 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. That's a huge deal in terms of a tiebreaker.
Yeah, that's the magic word we call in publishing, platform.
Yes.
So we also help advise authors on doing book proposals. A lot of authors, first of all, don't even know where to start. So if they do a manuscript, how do I get it to a publisher? And some naively pick up the phone and they can just call an editor and say, I've got an idea.
Press 7 to get published, right? It doesn't work like that.
So, you need to develop a very well thought out proposal. There's scores of books on Amazon about how to write a good proposal. Some people spend a year or more developing that proposal to be that compelling that it's going to make a best publisher want to publish them. So proposals are super important, and they have different sections. And one of the most important is your platform.
Got it. Which goes back to the marketing question. So what's realistic to the publisher now has expectations of the author of, you'll have a network, you'll have systems and processes to engage that network to help. What should an author be looking for? Because I think The other side of that is if I'm an author, I have choices today. I can self-publish, I can hybrid publish, I can traditional publish. And I think oftentimes authors have this sense of, sort of what do you call it, sort of the mother hen syndrome, like, oh, I'm going to
Yeah.
get a big publisher. All I have to do is write amazing things, and the publisher does that other stuff, like make sure books fly off the shelf. And what are the things that an author should be thinking about relative to choosing or partnering with a publisher today?
Yeah, let's see. So you mentioned first self-published hybrid traditional publisher. So I think that's probably the first choice to make, and that's a tricky choice to make. So I would say if let's say you're a speaker and you're going to your events and you want to have product and content to sell at those events, or you have your own audience and
Mhm.
you know how to reach them and you just want to get your content to that audience, or you're using your book as a calling card for your business. Those are all very legitimate reasons to do a book, and self-publishing might be the best option for you. Some people think, self-publishing, it's faster, I have more control, and then are disappointed to learn that most media, not all, but most media won't even consider a self-published book. And so you can still market it, but it's
Sure.
pretty much more on you. And you kind of want to think of why is it that you're publishing a book? People publish books for all kinds of reasons.
Right. What are your objectives? What's the point?
Yeah. So if you have this vision of I want the glory of being published and I'm in the New York Times and there's events and there's excitement and everyone's heard about it, then you probably do want to aim for a traditional publisher and maybe hire a publicist. So that's the first choice to make. And then you would probably want to work with a literary agent who would sell you to a traditional publisher if that's the way you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I'd definitely be looking for the marketing plan. What are they saying they are going to bring to the table? Chemistry is really important. Sometimes one publisher will really be impressive and their brand sounds great, but another publisher, they just gel with you and you just feel like this editor understands my message and I really want to work with them to develop this book. That's a really important reason to choose a certain publisher.
Sure.
Brand is certainly a factor. The media and influencers do decide on whether they'll cover something depending on the brand of the publisher. So I'd say those are the three most important criteria. There's others, but those would be the top three.
Got it. Got it. And I think as we touched on a bit earlier, people go into this space and there's a lot to learn. You've been around
Oh
this
yeah,
a
you
long,
can't
long
imagine.
time.
Can't imagine.
And even when you explain to a client, like, hey, there are business model issues to think about other than the branding
Oh yeah.
itself and hybrid and this, and there's multiple factors that you have to take into consideration, and it's a significant investment: time, energy, effort, money, opportunity cost, etc. And I think there are a lot of myths that are out there, or fantasies, or call them what you will, about what that looks like. What are some of the things that you're seeing today that are really helpful, creative, unique, that authors are doing to get the message out and get the book out? We mentioned podcasting before. I don't know if that's particularly new, but I think it's become a significant piece of the marketing buffet, if you will.
Yeah, so certainly podcasts are very influential, and we have close relationships with them. If an author can certainly try to pitch podcasts on their own. Let's see, for the pre-order campaigns, having an incentive strategy can be helpful. So if you buy one copy, you get this piece of content. If you buy 100 copies, you might get a virtual event. If you buy 200 copies, you get me in person.
Sure.
E-courses are something that authors are doing a lot of these days.
Yep.
And that might be as an incentive strategy. If you sign up for this
you get some tools.
Yeah. So buy the book, you get access to this e-course. That can be a helpful strategy. There's definitely all kinds of channels that are available. Clubhouse is definitely the hot new thing. And with all new things, it's hard to know if it'll last or if people will get tired of it and move on to the next new thing in a few months. But right now,
remember Vine, right?
it is red hot right now. And it was very well promoted, very well launched. And the crowd that is your crowd, Peter, and my crowd, Peter, and probably all the listeners' crowds listening, is on Clubhouse. You'd be amazed at some of the big name influencers that you just feel are unattainable. You can have access to anywhere are in the room with you at this event. And it's pretty easy to navigate and figure out and plan your own event. So that'd be one of my top new recommendations.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us, because you're knee deep in this for a long time.
As are you.
Yeah, thank you. But thank you for spending the time with us today, Mark, and sharing some of your observations. I appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Peter. Thanks for having me.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.